I thought you were doing something extemporaneous, and I was like, it's fine. Nobody's listening anyway. We have like 4 listeners, and 3 of them are people we talk to every day.
Joke's on you. I was just fucking up. Welcome back to Nero Nation with another hopefully fantastic episode of our hero De Niro, the only podcast where we watch and recap Robert De Niro's entire filmography in random order. I'm Mike, and with me as always is Mike, no relation.
Hi.
Nailed it this time. Fantastic. We're getting better every episode. This week we are talking about a film that I doubt you've heard of. It is the 2004 thriller? Horror film? I'm trying to really add a lot of question marks here.
I watched the movie yesterday, and I've still barely heard of it.
Yeah, it's Godsend. This is a film I want to talk about the context a little bit because I think it's interesting. 2004, I was a freshman in high school, so I guess you were a junior, huh, Mike?
Well, no, and neither were you. You were
was
a sophomore.
I was still a...
Yeah.
In 2000, I guess I was. Wow, time flies. I feel so old. Okay.
But I was a senior in high school. Yep.
Senior, yes. Wikipedia describes Godsend as a psychological horror thriller film. Yeah, that's writing a check that I don't think it's going to cash.
I am.
Starring Greg Kinnear, Rebecca Romijn, and Robert De Niro, directed by Nick Ham, never heard of him, from a screenplay by Mark Bomback, never heard of him. So just for some context, this is a pretty small budget film. Its budget was $25 million, and it only made $30 million at the box office, so it was a bit of a bomb. It was also a critical failure. And for some historical context, I went online and looked up what the most popular films were in May 2004. So some of the big hits from that time: Shrek 2, Van Helsing, Troy, The Day After Tomorrow, and Mean Girls. I think it's a pretty fun era for a film. Pretty good month. Yep, some real crowd pleasers.
Yep, not this.
Yeah, I'd never heard of Godsend. What's interesting about this film, because we were around 13 to 16 years old, I don't know, somewhere around there, 14 to 16. This film was rated PG-13.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it makes sense when you think about it, when we get into it, right? You're thinking about it now, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a very PG-13-esque horror film.
That would make it R-rated, yeah. You didn't say it, so I just want to make sure it's said for the listeners. This film has a 2 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, really? Does it? I didn't check Rotten Tomatoes.
Might be the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score of honestly any film I've ever seen in my life. Like, a 2.
That is really funny and sad.
49 out of 50 critics gave an unfavorable review. Like, that's like, I don't know. It almost feels like you'd have to try to make something that bad, honestly. Like,
did they try? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
Should we just get right into it? Get into our recap of Godsend?
Sure. Why not?
All right. It's my turn this week. I'm excited. I'm trying to condense this. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time talking about Godsend.
I think you're going to do a really good job because there's not much to say. So
yeah, joke's on you. This is going to be our longest episode yet. It's going to be longer than both 0 Day episodes. So
it's 6:48 p.m. and I'm hanging up this call at 7:48.
This is some Mission Impossible ass shit, man. Yep. Okay. Well, the film. We've
already been on the phone for an hour. Like,
that's a little look behind the veil, behind the curtain. Mike and I did have a conversation about entirely unrelated stuff prior to this because we hadn't seen each other in a few days. Honestly, that would probably make a much more interesting podcast than this recap of Godsend.
Yep.
But unfortunately, we have to stick to the plan. The film opens with just 3D Windows screensaver-ass visuals of cells splitting, accompanied by some swelling music. We just see everyone's names and the title Godsend. We follow the main character, I suppose. His name is Paul Duncan. He's played by Greg Kinnear. Right off the bat, I never see Greg Kinnear in films. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I really never do either. I thought he was fine. I honestly I think this movie's quite bad, but generally I thought the performances were good.
I agree.
I really nothing to write home about. They were totally good.
I liked the cast. I don't see Greg Kinnear much. I felt relieved because I did like him in the movie, and I think he's very good at looking sad. I checked his Wikipedia page, and I was very relieved that there was no controversy section because I wanted to give him some credit, give him some praise.
Him, right?
Right.
Yep.
He looks like a likable guy, and I was like, just please, I don't want to nice. Yeah, he seems like a nice guy. So we follow there's we see there's an 8-year-old's birthday party occurring at night for some reason, and Greg Kinnear, Paul, he's coming home late.
It's like
to his
6:30 p.m. Like, what is
dark
the timing
out.
of this
It's
party?
dark. It's like dark and raining, and he's coming home. He's arriving late to his son's birthday party. Why wouldn't you schedule it for a time when you're like comfortably home and settled?
Like say maybe like a weekend afternoon. I would think.
Exactly.
Like, probably would be ideal. Yeah.
And he's like holding a box like a present. So he like waited until the day of his son's party, until like after work to get a present. Sure. But he's coming home and decides to cut. I think they're in New York City. I think it's.
Yeah, it's never said, but it's got to be, right. They call it the city.
The city,
when they're not
right?
The city. So like,
and it's a De Niro film. De Niro's not shooting in Poughkeepsie or whatever.
Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York. Yeah. He's not shooting in Boston. Paul decides to cut through an alley. This is like the most 2004 ass movie ever. I honestly like, okay, we'll get more into it, but he cuts through the alley and these two, I suppose thugs, because they hold him up at knife point, and one of them recognizes Paul and like cancels the holdup because Paul was his 9th grade teacher and said Paul was the best teacher he ever had. So they apologize and they run off into the night. And really weird character introduction. I thought it was like pretty intense for what this movie is or wants to be. It's totally out of left field.
Yeah, but I think that better than anything else that the Paul character says or does or that happens to him, I think this works as a character moment. Like, this is like pretty effective storytelling. We're like learning, like, this is a good guy. You know,
yes,
like he's the kind of guy who, like, an ex-student who's followed a bad path in life,
the best teacher ever,
want to hurt, like, because he like has such a positive memory of like unsuccessful as it was, the impact he had on him when he was a kid, like, and it's all downhill from here in terms of the way they establish this character.
Yeah, Paul should have included in his lesson plan just like a little bit about like, don't hold people up at knife point. Don't threaten to slash people open with a butterfly knife. Like, that'll be really good.
The only mug you want is a tall glass of mug root beer.
Oh man, you kidding me? I would love a mug. Actually, I would.
I got one in the fridge downstairs.
I'd have to edit out my burps. I can't do it. I'm drinking flat water during the record.
No, I'm saving it for after the pod.
So Paul does make it home to the birthday party for his son Adam. He's turning 8 years old. His wife is 2004 Rebecca Romijn. Oh my God, the crush I have. She has a major supporting role in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, which is not a show that I love, but it's fine and I do watch it. And man, she's still as hot as ever. And like the whole cast is good, so they're still madly in love. They love their son. It's a very idyllic existence in the city. The next day, I think it's implied.
They think they're cool for living there, okay?
They do, yeah, very cool. Like, we're not going to let having a kid change us living in this podunk fucking city where I get knifed on my way home from work. Like, maybe you should let having a kid change that lifestyle a little bit. Like, I'm not like, I don't love the suburbs, but like, I don't know, maybe you don't have to be in like a high crime fucking area in this very, listen, we'll see the dangers of the city soon. So the next day for Adam's birthday, and Adam for his birthday, he gets a really sick varsity jacket. It's like white and red. It's pretty cool. Pretty like I'd rock that shit.
I agree. It would look really cool.
It would, yeah. I don't know if I'd go with a lot of my stuff. I'm not really a red guy, but pretty cool jacket. The next day, they go shopping for sneakers at some store in the city for Adam. So he gets a pretty sweet pair of basketball sneaks, and he has his basketball with him. So he tells his parents, hey, I'm going to go wait outside and like test these bad boys out, do a little tiptoeing, whatever, jumping.
Mom. His dad's
just his mom. Sorry. His dad's isn't there. So he's outside on the side. Yeah. So he's outside on the sidewalk. He's bouncing his basketball. He's kind of like jumping up and down, doing, bored kid shit stuff. And the basketball, he drops it and it rolls into like, not the side of the road, but there's like a little construction zone there. It like rolls into the dirt. And so Adam runs into the construction zone to grab it. And the craziest scene that I've seen in a film in a really long time occurs. This is when
you rewatched it.
Yes, I try not to do this because I've said to the podcast, at least, I try not to talk to Mike about the movies until we record. I know it doesn't actually play out that way, but like this time I had to. So I messaged him and like couldn't believe what I saw. So It's like a Rube Goldberg machine. It's so awesome.
It is awesome.
And this movie is a tight 100 minutes long, so shit moves. Adam drops his basketball and it rolls into the construction zone. He runs off after it. When he picks it up, as he's picking it up, a truck that's driving down the road, must be going 30 miles per hour, veers.
Pretty fast.
Yeah, veers off the road to dodge a bicyclist who for some reason is driving or riding perpendicular to the fucking street. So the car veers off away from the cyclist towards the construction zone, hits a ramp made of dirt that is at the end of the construction zone for some reason, and nails Adam in the fucking face.
Oh yeah, he gets fucking demolished.
My reaction, and I was watching this alone, like literally last night on my computer, and my reaction was to emit the loudest involuntary laugh I've ever had in my whole life. I wasn't even laughing at the scene. It was just one exasperated laugh. And then I rewound it just to watch it again because it was so audacious and unintentionally funny. It really blew me away and I loved it. It honestly helped me buy into the movie a bit because I wasn't looking forward to it, just knowing its critical reception. But that really kind of sold me on it. Paul arrives home that night. There to multiple messages because this is 2004 and people don't have smartphones yet, and hears the bad news and breaks down in tears. Hey, nice scene for Greg Kinnear. And we get a time jump to the funeral in a snowy cemetery. Or maybe it wasn't a funeral. Maybe they were visiting him. Was it wintertime?
I think it was the prep for the funeral.
Okay. Well, it's wintertime at that point.
All the timing of everything in this movie is very confusing.
A lot of we talk about this here. Time jumps.
When do you think this movie takes place? Because there's nothing about the film to suggest that it's not meant to be contemporary, relative to 2004. But I don't think you see a single car in the movie with a model year later than 1995. Did that strike you as odd? It was very confusing to me. It seemed like it was supposed to be a period piece, but they don't do anything with that. Why are all the cars so old?
No, because Paul drives a then current Toyota Highlander.
I have no memory of seeing that.
Oh no, we see it. It's the classic beige, champagne color. Sure. So he drove a modern car. So it was set in then present day. But yes, we see a lot of landline telephones in this film. And you're right, there is a sort of an old school sensibility to it. So whatever funeral related situation is occurring, Paul and Rebecca Romijn's character is Jesse. Paul and Jesse are grieving their dead son who got 360 no-scoped by a truck on the streets. And we get our first appearance of the great Robert De Niro at 10 minutes and 11 seconds. So he walks up to Paul and Jesse, and apparently he taught Jesse in undergrad. He's a doctor. He introduces himself as a fertility specialist and really wants to chat with them about something. He's really pushy about it. Paul is being very polite by saying, hey, now's not a good time. Kind of grieving a dead kid died here. Yeah. And De Niro is I promise it'll just take a little bit of your time. It's very relevant. Let me buy you dinner across the street. So they're at a nice restaurant in a booth, which you always want the booth. You don't want a table. And Richard, nice. It did look like a nice restaurant. Richard starts explaining this groundbreaking sci-fi fucking procedure he's developed. Basically, and listen, correct me if I'm wrong because I very well may be, he has developed the ability to clone a person, create a perfect biological clone from a single cell.
That is correct.
Yes. Yep. And so he offers this to Paul and Jesse as a means to rebirth Adam. The reactions here are, basically what you would expect for this movie to continue. Paul is initially furious, rejecting the idea, and Jesse is a little tempted since, as Richard, De Niro's character is Richard Godsend. Richard, reveals that he looked at her file and knows that she's unable to conceive another child. So this is kind of all they've got unless they want to adopt or something. It seems like there are other ways to have a child that aren't clone, making an exact clone of your dead son, but grief makes us all do crazy things. What did you think about these initial reactions? Obviously grief will make us do things we don't expect. You have a daughter, you have a child. Would you feel, do you think, just based on what you know about yourself, that you would feel compelled to take up the offer because it would give you the perfect clone and being able to see her face again? Or would you not want to because it'd be fucking weird and unnerving to see that exact same face again?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. So
Yeah,
I
was
undoubtedly
curious.
would do it. I don't even need to think about it. Like I would do it. I would be completely unhesitating. But like
be a
there's so
Jesse.
much about the way they handle it that is like so baffling. So like, you know, so like just because we're talking about it, right? They're going to decide to do it.
Of
and
course.
so when they decide to do it, Robert De Niro warns them about how this is immoral and like very illegal in so many different ways. So they're gonna have to basically go into like WITSEC, like change
Yes.
their names and like do all this
yeah,
other
really,
shit.
yes.
And it's like, would they really? Because
Right.
like they choose to name him Adam,
Oh, that really made me
but like
take a step back.
They cut his hair different, and like
Yeah.
it seems to me that like they could just have another kid and be like, oh yeah, we got IVF and like it was better than we thought it would be, and like nobody's gonna question that, and just name him like Seth and cut his
Right.
hair different.
Right.
Like I
What do you
don't
mean?
know,
What do you
like,
mean? What do you mean by have another kid?
What do you mean? No, so they
She-
could do it and just lie to their family and just say like, oh, it's not a clone of Adam. Like we just had
right.
another kid.
Okay, that you're right.
Like,
I no, I only asked
and we
because they
named him
said she couldn't
Seth because
conceive.
he isn't Adam. Like,
Yes.
like I don't know. I think that like think about it. Like if there was somebody in your family who you knew had fertility problems, and they came to you and they were like, "Oh, we had a kid," but your impression was that was impossible. You might be like a little bit of light prodding. Like you'd just be like, "Oh, like how did that happen? I really thought that you had like an intractable fertility problem," and they would be like, "Any explanation." And because you're like a normal fucking person, you would just be like, oh, I just accept that. I'll never ask about it again. Like, it's like there's no need, this like contrivance about like how they have to go into like hiding. Like, it really doesn't make any sense. Like, I
Right.
don't,
So, yeah, for context, during or after that conversation, Paul breaks down after watching some home videos and decides that they should do the procedure. And yeah, Richard lays down these conditions. He says because it's so illegal, you need to sever all ties from your family and friends and relocate 300 miles away. Like, you need to start an entirely new life. Which and that-
Godsend, Pennsylvania.
yeah, it's Riverton somewhere. I suppose New York. But that's when I wanted to ask you. I was like, I don't know. Again, grief really does affect us
I don't
differently.
think I'd
but
do this.
yeah, ending your entire life as you know it to move to some rural northeastern town, and it's super tough. Because you're right. At this point, they don't know why Godsend really wants them to be up there. But I would think you could just like have the new kid, have the clone, and no one will, even if he looks exactly the same as Adam, no one's going to
gonna
have
be
that.
like, holy shit, you made a clone of your dead
Right?
son.
Did you clone? Did you somehow develop the ability to clone, make perfect clones of dead children? No one's going to have
maybe
that.
like a couple of the less couth people in your life might like make a kind of rude comment that he looks a lot like your dead son.
Right. And
No
you would
one's
just,
going to make that connection and be like, oh, it's an illegal clone.
Right. And because no one else knows the technology exists, if anyone did accuse you, you would just say, what are you, fucking stupid? This is not how children are made. You ignoramus. So, but they decide to do it because we need to have a movie. And so they move to Riverton and they settle into a really large lakefront home. God damn.
It looked like a $500,000 house.
Seriously,
even in, like, the
I
early
thought the
2000s.
same-
I was like,
I thought
this
the
guy's a
exact
fucking
same
teacher. He's
thing.
probably making $37,000 a year. Like,
I assume that Godsend was paying for it. I
yeah,
think
but
he
isn't
was.
that suspicious?
Yes, very much so. But they settle into this big ass house and they perform the cloning procedure where they implant the cell into whatever, it looks like they're inserting something into Jesse's womb. There's a little time jump and Jesse gives birth to the new Adam. So I don't know if you want me to do this, but in my notes, I referred, knowing that it was a horror film, ostensibly, I referred to this child as Badam. How do you feel about that? Yeah. Okay. Badam. So,
I think it is technically a horror film.
It is certainly.
I don't
it is a
think there's
self-described horror film.
I don't think there's even a single moment of this film that's even slightly scary. So sure,
Yes,
it's a horror film.
Right. And that's why I wanted people to know up front, because I didn't know until afterwards. I thought, damn, this is really light on scares. And I'm using that term loosely. And I realized, it makes more sense when you realize it's a PG-13 horror film. But we get some time jumps, and while raising Badam, Paul and Jesse start noticing some eerily familiar behaviors that match Adam. Finally, we time jump again, and it's Badam's 8th birthday. So this is as old as Adam was when he, got a truck to the face. And Richard visits, during the birthday party, which much more reasonably, I think they learned from their mistake last time, and they had this during the day, like during an afternoon at their lakefront house. Richard visits and flies a kite with Badam. They seem to have a great relationship. He's known as Uncle Richard. But afterwards, Badam begins experiencing these disturbing nightmares and visions. And, it's shot with a lot of quick cuts and lens flares and shit like that.
Beautiful cinematography.
Yeah, I was trying to parse out some of the imagery. It looks like we see a dark hallway with banging doors, like kids banging on windows and stuff like that. Some sort of sinister version of his reflection yelling at him. And he has a dream of his own dead self. So he's going through a lot. Being a tween is tough. Are you a tween? When are you a tween? 10?
Yeah, I think it's like 10 to 12. Like okay. You're in between. Like you're like in between childhood and being a teen.
Okay. So this goes on for some time, and Badam eventually collapses after having a vision, which brings them to the Godsend Institute. So it sounds like Richard's backstory, what we know of him so far, is that he's basically a brilliant doctor who basically went off the map. He made a lot of money, selling something, whatever the fuck it was, doesn't matter. He made a lot of money, and then he basically didn't go off the grid, but kind of just disappeared from the public. And so he started this Godsend Institute in the middle of nowhere, Riverton, New York. And so his doctors that work for him, his staff, they don't know that he's developed this insanely illegal procedure. They just think that Badam is the product of IVF, that it was just like a high risk IVF procedure. So he's really the only one who knows about what's really happening there. But they take Badam to a visit at the Godsend Institute. Seems like everything's fine. Later at school, Badam's behavior worsens. And there's like this little scene where he's interacting with some school kids, and some douche nozzle kid is like kind of bullying him and challenges him to like a swinging contest. And so Badam goes on the swing, and he's swinging high and starts spitting on the bully, which I thought was very funny.
I love the spitting. What did I write about this? Yeah, I don't know if I did write anything about it.
Okay,
I did
perfect.
love the spitting though. Yeah.
The spitting was funny because his teacher comes over to like get them to stop it. And Badam falls after he like jumps off the swing or is pulled off the swing. And the teacher leans over to check on him, and then he spits in the teacher's face. Thought it was very funny. Good comedy. They should have described this movie as a comedy instead of a psychological thriller horror film or whatever the fuck they say.
It's a psychological comedy.
Yeah. So Badam eventually tells Paul about Zachary, who is this boy in his dreams that he can't see the face of, but who wears Adam's varsity jacket, his sick jacket that he got when he was 8 years old, not long for this earth. So Paul grows concerned about this and starts researching. So he went to, I think it was called www.searchsite.web. Oh yeah, it was so good. It's the best like fake Google that I've seen in a film. And he starts researching the Godsend Institute and reaches out to an old friend who knows of Godsend and explains a little bit of the backstory. He's starting to have concerns about this whole procedure that he bought into with extremely little information. So Paul sneaks away to investigate this. He goes into the city and visits a St. Pius school, which is this abandoned building that burned down years ago. He wanders around in the school, does some urban exploration, which, by the way, this is not something I originally planned on talking about, but have you ever done urban exploration? You ever get into that? I feel like that was a real fad maybe like 15 years ago.
I've gone down in the subway before. You ever been down in the subway?
Yeah, that's neat. That's kind of cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah,
I've done it a couple of times.
Yep.
Yeah, in general, it's not the sort of hobby that appeals to me. Just like wandering around abandoned buildings, like breathing in dust and asbestos. But that's what he does, and he finds this drawing of like a house burning or a building burning, signed by Zachary Clark, and it has the address written on the back, which when I was a kid, I don't remember ever writing my address on the back of things that I drew in school, but thank goodness Zachary Clark did this. Yeah, the most unrealistic leap of faith in this entire movie. No, that's not true at all. You have no idea what's coming later. And so he goes to the house, this brownstone.
We got to stop for a second. I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you and fill in any gaps, but you did skip something incredibly important. Like, it's one of the most important things in the movie. So in between the stuff that you shared about Badam just acting like a weirdo and like this revelation, the kid dies. So another kid dies. So another mom calls Jesse because her kid had been out playing with Badam and then he was missing. And then a couple days later, he's found dead. And Paul and Jesse think like, oh, maybe Badam killed him. Like, did you not note this? It's like, it's one of the 3 or 4 most important plot points in the entire movie.
I don't think that happened yet, man. Did it happen?
You're saying he went to the school, right?
Yeah.
Dude, you're in like the last 30 minutes of the movie when he goes to the school. Like, so much has happened between where you were and where you are now. We have skipped 7 paragraphs of my notes to get to like the last thing you said and now him being at the school. I don't care. I just want to make sure we acknowledge it. Like, I don't care. I just want to be done with this recap. I just think that is legitimately important for the listeners to know. Like, that's like a very important, it's what makes them suspect like something is seriously wrong. Like, and like there's a moment where Adam's sitting in the backseat of the car and he like has his eyes open and he's just like staring stone-faced, even though the window's open so he can like hear
he goes to the Godsend Institute multiple times. That happens later.
No, you're saying that he's at the St. Pius Institute, the school. That is in the last 30 minutes of the movie. He goes to the school and then he goes to the old black lady's house who was like the housekeeper or like nanny or whomever for Zachary. And then we're like at the end. And then he confronts Richard and he hits him with the candlestick and then the resolution happens. That's like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we kind of just did the whole film. I just feel like we kind of just
honestly, if that's the way we do it, like that's pretty funny. Yeah.
I mean, Jesus. I was trying to use the condensed version of my notes that clearly cut out a lot of the bullshit. Oh my God. It is raining so loudly all of a sudden.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, I think it's like being picked up on the microphone, it hitting the window. It's really loud.
It still feels very opulent and luxurious to me to have windows that open in my house after years of not being able to open my windows.
Okay, listen, we're just going to use my regular notes and try to see if I can condense on the fly. We're going to go back to that original visit to the Godsend Institute and basically Richard says that Badam is older now than Adam ever was. And so we don't know. Like this could have happened to Adam. There's no way for us to know what he would have gone through. But Badam is having these visions. He's in a school. They're screaming kids. It's red. I was wondering, is he in hell? Like, what's going on here? But Richard eventually returns Badam home and says he's fine. It was whatever. It's all good, homie. But Badam is replicating drawings that he has, a drawing that he had in his vision, which was the one that I mentioned earlier of this burning building. And runs away as Paul chases him. He runs away into the woods because Riverton is a very like classic rural northeastern kind of town, sleepy town, and runs away into this weird old metal shed that looks grody as fuck. And while he runs in there, Kinnear or Paul, he runs into the shed. He leaves with Badam, but the camera lingers on this shot of an axe that's hanging from the ceiling of it. Paul talks to Jesse and wants to take Badam to a specialist, which I think is very reasonable. Richard is supposedly a fertility specialist, so what the fuck does he know about child psychology? But Jesse is against it, and Richard is extremely against it. He's like, you cannot, like, you can't have Paul talk to anyone. This needs to stay between us. I can take care of everything, which at this point, why can't he talk to... I understand why Richard wants to be controlling, but why would Paul listen to that? There's no reason to think that some child psychologist 8 years later is going to. It just none of this makes any sense. But really whatever. But whatever. Badam's still having these visions. They seem to be worsening. Kinnear is lecturing in class about DNA, very relevant to the movie. And we do see him drive home in his 2004 champagne color to it, a Highlander, and nearly runs over Badham, which I thought was an incredible callback to Adam's death, because he's driving down this gravel road in the middle of nowhere, Riverton, and what a coincidence that Badham just happens to be riding his bike like in front of this car that's coming. Just really incredible coincidence.
This is a classic you watching a movie moment. He's out front of their house.
Oh, he's out front of their house. He was coming home. I didn't see the house.
He was coming home, and he was in a hurry to get home, and Adam like rides into the street right in front of the house. Like it made sense that he was there. It was like the most logical.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
It was like the end of their driveway. Yep.
I have to apologize to the entire creative team of Godsend. I'm tucking my tail between my legs.
You did not give this film its due here. Yeah,
that's true. That was wrong of me. But Jesse visits Richard at the Institute. We have the spitting incident. So yeah, I really was condensing a lot more than I realized.
I think it's great. I mean, we're almost done. So
yeah, Paul takes the family. He just takes them in the car. Hey, we're going for a drive. I'm not going to say where we're going, and then reveals during the drive, no, we're going to see a fucking specialist. This shit is insane. My child is having demented visions.
For this scene. One of the funniest things in the film, by the way.
What was it?
Because I don't know if you remember this, but Paul is on the phone with this Dr. Beauford before this scene, and he's arranging the appointment, and Jesse's like right there. Like she's obviously in earshot of the phone call. And he says something that makes it very clear that he's like setting up an appointment, like having an official conversation with someone he knows exactly who they are and like why he's talking to them. And then when he hangs up, Jesse's like, "Oh, who was that?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing, wrong number." And
that's
it's like
awesome.
the most like obvious lie ever. And I was like, this guy is a fucking dipshit. But then in the next scene, she's surprised by it. So I guess she wasn't listening, even though she was right there.
Right. Why didn't he wait for her to go into another wing of their 3,000 square foot house? The call's wrapping up. Okay, so Friday, 3:30 p.m., childhood psychologist consultation. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're right. She's totally surprised. But they talk to the expert, the specialist, and Badham is telling the doctor that he sees Zachary. He won't leave him alone. He's the boy who lives in my dreams. I can't see his face, but notes the really sick varsity jacket that he wears. Afterwards, they're driving. They're driving home at night back to Riverton, and Badham freaks out because he's seeing Zachary, aka Adam, because he looks just like Adam. They nearly crash into a semi truck, which I thought was a funny moment, stupid like jump scare, fake out kind of thing. And later at home, Badham is talking to Paul one-on-one and asks Paul if he died, and Paul lies to his fucking face, and it just says, "Of course not," with that warmth that only Greg Kinnear can provide. But later on, Paul tells Jesse, I think our son is remembering things from his first life, which Jesse totally dismisses, which, I suppose you would, but whatever. Anything's possible in this movie, right? So Badham, he returns to the creepy shed and has visions of the axe coming down on him, but they're fake outs because this movie is so boring and doesn't. It's not boring. It just says nothing happening. It's one of those like nothing happening. Yeah. He draws the burning building again and signs it Zachary this time. So, shit's getting kind of, weird, kind of Willy Wonka. Badham follows his friends down. I think they're his friends. They're just neighborhood boys, whatever. And follows them down to this creek that's like overlooked by a bridge. And it's intercut with scenes of De Niro walking around in his office and Paul driving the Highlander. Paul gets out and looks over the bridge and he sees in the big creek, one of the kids is like, he like looks, it's like intercut back and forth, but basically one of the kids is poking a stick into the stream. And then all of a sudden we see this first person shot of the axe coming down into the kid's head. Jesse goes into the base. I can't
believe that you skipped this, by the way. This is so funny.
Oh yeah, it is really funny. Very pivotal moment in the film. Listen, now I know
the most important thing.
We're workshop. I'm going to leave it in. I'm going to leave in my gaff. We're learning. I'm listening and learning. Jesse's a photographer, which is like basically irrelevant except for this scene. She goes into her basement, which she's using as a dark room, and finds these pictures of Badham that she took mutilated, like just all cut up. Very creepy.
So creepy.
Badham enters this trance-like state at one point and is talking to Richard, Paul, and Jesse at the Godsend Institute. He's yelling about his dumb visions. He's in school. Kids are yelling at him. He's Zachary Clark, blah, blah, blah. Paul gets mad at Richard and accuses Richard of hiding something, which, he is. So good call. The family is driving home and they stop on that same bridge from before, and there's a whole police fire scene happening. Something's going down. So they stop on the bridge, and a mother screams while firefighters wade into the creek to retrieve the dead body of the kid earlier who got axed in the face or the head or whatever. And Paul looks over from the bridge while Badham just sits in the car and stares straight ahead without any emotion on his face. And I think they're trying to play it as like a creepy scene, but why would it be creepy? If he actually didn't do it, why would he have any idea of what's happening? Maybe he's just like thinking about Pokemon or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that makes it creepy is like, I think the thing that makes it creepy is that he can obviously hear the screaming because the window is open. But like,
that's true. And he doesn't like turn
another one
to
of
look.
the funniest scenes in the entire film because like it's winter and like they obviously like couldn't figure out how to block this scene such that like the fact that he's having the facial reaction he's having is creepy, but like you would have the window closed obviously in real life, but for some reason the window's open because we need to be able to see as viewers that he can hear
the kind of any glare
reacting to it. Because like to your point, otherwise it wouldn't be creepy. You would just be like, yeah, he's like a child, like I don't know, he's probably just daydreaming about some bullshit. He's 8.
Right.
It's not creepy at all.
He's a pre-tween.
And like that's the thing about the whole film, by the way, is like, you know, we know as viewers that something untoward is happening, so we like believe Paul, but like everyone in his life tells him like, yeah, it's just night terrors, and like that's what you'd think too.
Right, of course.
Like if your like 8-year-old son like started acting this way, like you would never think it was something supernatural. You would be like, yeah, I guess I'm just really unlucky and my kid's gonna be one of the kids that has night terrors. Like that really sucks.
Right. They say several times before the big reveal later on, like that. And it's the original argument that Paul makes to Jesse in favor of not doing this procedure, which is the reality of this sort of procedure is, yes, it would be a biological clone, but it would be an entirely different person because it would not have any of the experiences of Adam. So this whole crackpot idea or thought that Badham is remembering his past life is the most insane thing ever. So, of course, Richard deters him from that line of thinking, and as does Jesse, because it's totally batshit. That's not how biology works. He's a biology teacher. The best teacher that guy ever had. No wonder he's like on the street holding people up.
Right.
The education was not good.
Biology.
Very bad education.
Yep.
So at this point,
I want to observe something else, by the way, really quick.
Oh, okay.
Up until this point in the film, there have been these really funny scenes interspersed of Robert De Niro just looking kind of menacing in his office. And like, I love this because I had barely, like, I think they do such a bad job of suggesting that Robert De Niro's character is evil because everything he's saying makes sense. Like,
yes.
He's just like, yeah, I think you're overreacting. Like, these things that you're talking about are not rooted in biology. And it's like, again, like as viewers, we know that he has to be evil because that's like going to be the explanation for the movie.
Right.
But like they must have watched it and realized like, oh, it's really not coming through. And so they had to intersperse these just random scenes, like as creepy things are happening to our main characters, of him just standing in his office, like fondling stress balls.
It's
and
so
just, like,
funny. Just
it's
fondling
shot
those metal
from
balls.
a low angle to make him look like kind of menacing, and like it's very dark and like, oh, it's so stupid. Like it's awesome.
That's honestly a great point because obviously, as people who have watched a movie before, we know that when De Niro shows up 10 minutes in, oh, this is the antagonist. But the movie...
We've met our heroes.
Right. The only thing that conveys that is just knowing it's just the way it's structured as a film, because you're right. They really don't indicate that he's a villain in any sort of way.
He seems warm and like kind and competent.
He
like,
helped
that's like
them.
the entire way he's presented.
Right. He helped them have another child. He has a great relationship with Badham. He seems like a close family friend. He's given them this new chance with their son as far as they're concerned. But you're right. It's very funny how badly they fail at conveying that through most of this plot. I'm only noting this because I hate it so much. Paul sneaks out the next morning to go to the city while Badham watches from like one of the windows, and then he does a little jump scare. There's a little jump scare where he's just standing by Jessie while she's in bed, and she wakes up and sees him, and we get the loud musical sting. And I haven't had an opportunity to complain about this yet in the podcast because I think this is our first horror film. But let's take a moment here. How do you feel about horror films, Mike? Just in general.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a thing that I particularly like. I don't really like being scared. I mean, like you and me really disagree about this, right? I prefer elevated horror to horror. But like, you know, what's funny about this movie is, and I want to talk about this more in the wrap up, but like, it's kind of proto elevated horror, but like it doesn't succeed. I think that's what it's trying to do. Like, it's trying to like be a horror movie that like is thought provoking, that like presents ethical questions and depicts like realistic people having like realistic emotional and psychological struggles in their relationships, and like it fails like in totality. Like it's beautiful. It's like a beautiful thing. I don't know. What do you think about horror?
In general, it's one, I'd say probably one of my least favorite film genres.
Same.
I'm not a big horror guy. It's rare. Although the last couple of years, feel free to check out my Letterboxd at Mike Back at You. I have been trying to watch nothing but horror films during the month of October, just to kind of get in that Halloween spirit. And it's been fun, especially when I haven't seen many. So I get to kind of pick from the cream of the crop. And I've seen some really fantastic films that way. But in general, it's not a genre that I gravitate towards. And I really, really hate cheap horror scares. I really hate jump scares. My perspective on jump scares is they are not actually scares. They're just startling.
They're just jumps.
Right, because you see something different and you hear a very loud noise. That's not scary, it's just startling. But we get a jump scare there. Man, incredible. This is our first horror film for the podcast.
What a horror film it is.
Yeah. We should really have been tracking our scares per minute. Paul drives into the city and goes to the abandoned St. Pius school, where he wanders through the building and finds the original Zachary Clark drawing of the burned house. He goes to the address that's written on there in crayon, and some young mom with a baby answers, who, you know, she says, listen, we don't know the original owners. We moved in here 6 years ago after the house was rebuilt after a fire. But I happen to have the name of the nanny who used to work at the house before it was burned down.
This was so contrived as well.
It really was.
The reason why she has the name is because they were looking for a nanny, and the lady who worked for the family who lived in the house before it was rebuilt happened to apply. Like, what?
Yep.
That would never happen. But it's so stupid.
I completely agree. A city of how many millions of people?
Right. There's 20 million people who live there. Like, there's got to be thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who like would apply for a nanny job. Like, What are the chances?
6 years later, right, or however long. So this woman, Nora Williams, Paul goes to visit her, and she's an older black woman who recognizes Zachary's name when it's mentioned. And we're kind of cutting between Nora giving exposition about Zachary to Jesse.
Cora, not Nora. Cora.
It's Cora?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll check on Wikipedia to make sure, but... Yeah.
I'm just... Okay. Oh, okay.
I don't know if you know this, but Nora is my child's name.
Well, I know. I thought it was Nora.
Recognize that one. Yeah, they don't say. Oh, there it is. Yep, Cora Williams. Played by Janet Bailey. Yeah.
Okay. Good catch. Okay.
Cora's a nice name.
So I'm going to rewrite my notes.
With Nora, I could name a second daughter Cora. It's a really nice name. Yeah.
It seems like Coral, but you forgot the L.
I like Coral.
You know what?
It's a good name too for a kid.
Norral. That'd be a good name for a girl.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Listen. If there are any female listeners to our hero De Niro that aren't Mike's wife Caroline, who are looking to have a kid and are okay with the name Norral, just hit me up at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. That's right. Well, email. Don't call me.
Email you and make a proposal at our joint podcast.
I would appreciate it. Yeah. But in your proposal, make sure it follows live show rules. So Nora provides Cora. God damn it! It's okay. Cora provides exposition about Zachary. He was a troubled child, and she thinks that he burned St. Pius down, and tells Paul, which is the sort of shit I would never tell anyone. I would keep this shit I'd take it with me to the grave. She tells Paul that one time, like, she just saw nothing but evil in Zachary's eyes and knew that he had to die. She tried to suffocate him in the bathtub with a shower curtain, but she lost her nerve because killing a kid is basically, I don't know, one of the all-time top worst things a person can do.
That's like a really bad sin.
Right.
Like, it's got to be like one of the 2 or 3 worst sins. It's killing.
Right. I think killing an adult that you think is heinous has got to be pretty difficult, but like a kid,
right? Like an 8-year-old, like I don't think so, man. Like, yeah,
right.
I don't think I could do it.
That's pretty gnarly. So she loses her nerve, but Zachary never mentioned it or anything like that. I guess she had a premonition of a fire. I guess she's some sort of mystical whatever. I don't know. It felt like the sort of thing that might come off as racist if I knew more about these tropes. This character Cora,
well,
but she
like,
had a
like
magical Negro. That's
called?
right. Yep.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
we got there. Yeah, she has
I think
premonitions.
We all know that one. Like she definitely is that trope.
Right. If I had premonitions, I think I'd tell you guys, and you'd be like, oh, you might want to get checked for like schizophrenia or something. But she had a premonition of a fire. Then eventually Zachary burned down his house, killing his mother in the fire. And Cora has a premonition of a fire, and then the house burns down. Zachary's mother dies by being hit in the head with a hammer.
Stop. Hammer time.
Paul asks Cora, where was the father? And then we realize, the father was Richard Godsend, Robert De Niro.
I love this, by the way.
Big revelation, yeah.
I feel like the way this is revealed is so stupid because, like, that's such a weird time for him to have asked, where's the father? Like, I feel like if you got this deep into the story, and you learned that this was the way the story ended in this crazy way, I think you would just be like, oh, it must have been a single mother. Like, that's what I thought, honestly. I was like, oh, I guess she's a single mother because they haven't mentioned a father.
A father's not being mentioned.
He has to ask, and it can't be until the end of the story, because as soon as she asks, Cora is going to say, at the very least, that he was a doctor, and maybe that his specialty was an OBGYN.
Right.
And then the twist happens at the wrong time, like from a pacing perspective. And like, it's just like, all this writing is so bad. Like they're just like tying themselves into knots to like make the beats work. Like this is like the window open thing and like this thing. And it's like, just write a better script. I don't know. Like if you are finding that you have to do something that is like either narratively or physically unbelievable to like make this read as legible to the viewers, maybe try rewriting the scene. Like it's just not working. I find a different way to do it.
I'm realizing now, as you say that, because you're making great points. Robert De Niro, his character's name is Richard Wells. So his name is...
I think it was Godsend. I thought you were making a joke.
I forgot. I forgot what his last name was.
I almost corrected you, but I was like, this has to be a joke. It's too funny for him to be being serious.
I wish I could be that funny on purpose.
I almost called him Dr. Godsend for the whole time, but I didn't want to lean into it too much. But that would have just made you feel more certain that you were right about what his name was.
But the reason I thought to double check on the Wikipedia page is because his name is Richard Wells, and obviously it's a misdirect.
Richard Godsend.
It's a misdirect on the part of the filmmakers Zachary Clark. So now I'm realizing because Paul's friend knew during a phone call about Wells's reputation and like explained his backstory. His backstory was that he was like a doctor or a scientist who got rich off of some patent or invention or something, made a shit ton of money selling it, and then basically fucked off into obscurity. But apparently all of that happened after the death of his son. He must have created a new identity for himself.
Nobody seems to know about the death of the son. No, right. I don't think it all could have happened after the son. This is another thing that's unbelievable.
Then why is his name Wells and his son's name Clark?
I don't know. Maybe he just changed. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
So Robert De Niro is grieving the death of his bastard son with whom he lived.
I don't believe, though, that this was supposed to be a second disappearance after. I think it's just a bad story. I think they did mean for the disappearance to be like coincidental with the story that his friend tells him. And like they just like and like the other points we're making, like it just like they didn't find a way to make it make sense to humans who live in the world and interact with humans. Right?
It's gonna be really fun to re-listen to this in the edit and just hear all the times that I say Richard Godsend.
No, the unfortunate thing is you never said it again.
Oh,
it would
really?
Be so funny if you had said it more, but like I don't think you ever said it.
I was saying it in my head for sure. So there are some creepy moments where like Adam says shit like, or Badam says shit like, Adam can't come out to play right now, Mrs. Duncan, whatever, blah, blah, bullshit. We end up at the funeral for the kid who got axed in the fucking face or had back of the head. I guess it was the face. And they consider, apparently the investigating parties thought it was an accident, which I guess you could slip in a creek and fall. Could you really fall on a rock so hard that it would look like an axe wound? I don't know, but that's how the terrible police department of Riverton
weigh like 70 pounds.
Yeah,
like there just isn't enough physical force to like do that kind of damage. Like it's like that you'd have to weigh 400 pounds and like fall as fast as you could to like make a gash like that in your skull, the hardest bone in your body. Like,
it's pretty hard.
Oh, this movie is terrible.
Unfortunately, so I think we're gonna have to get the Mythbusters back again. They're gonna have to test this one. They're gonna have to make a ballistic gel 8-year-old and just destroy it in a variety of funny ways.
When in doubt, C4.
But after that, we're at the funeral for the dead kid, and Paul is talking to Richard afterwards in the church. Basically, we get this whole exposition dump where, and this is, I love where it goes, but basically Richard says that he used, so basically Zachary died in the house fire and his body was too damaged to use any of his cells for the Godsend procedure. So he was able to use some of Zachary's gene data and I guess map it onto Adam's cell or something and implant that into Jesse and then just hope for didn't know what would happen, but hoped, I guess, that Zachary would somehow overtake Badam's genetic programming or something like that. Did this make any fucking sense to you as a sci-fi plot conceit? No, it was really convoluted. It was really convoluted. My thought was, listen, I'm not a fucking scientist, okay? But if you are altering Adam's cell in any way, like the DNA in any way, I guess like the argument is that Richard is able to isolate it so specifically. Like, wouldn't it affect this kid's appearance in some way? Don't you think he'd look a little like Zachary? I guess not in this film, but whatever. Badam is a perfect, appearance clone of Adam. So whatever. That's another, I feel like, misdirect, cheap storytelling. But Richard, this conversation ends incredible. He goes, this was an experiment. And he basically recommends killing Badam and starting over from scratch.
I love that. Yep.
What so
where
good.
Are my notes? What did I write about this? Hang on. Oh no. No, the thing that made me laugh was actually in the previous scene. I really loved Robert De Niro's line, "Tell me something. If I'm not supposed to do this, Paul, then how is it that I can?" It's like the dumbest like villain line I've ever heard in my life. Maybe that should be the cold open. Like just tell me, Paul, if I'm not supposed to do this, how is it that I can? Like that's so fucking stupid. That's an insane thing to say to someone.
I have a couple of really kind of high level arguments about the morality of the procedure.
Yeah,
that's a really funny way to justify it.
Like killing a child.
Right. So yeah, Paul is not down with the idea of murdering his son. And so they get into an altercation and it is pretty fair. And they get into an altercation and knock over a candle. A fire starts and De Niro manages to get one over on Paul or De Niro, Richard Godsend, MD, Dr. Godsend, MD, and hits Paul in the head with some blunt object. So Richard drives away, and I noted he is a fellow BMW driver. He drives a BMW 7 Series sedan. Hashtag beautiful BMW car. Drivers. Yep. Beautiful car. Actually, that's a pretty ugly generation of that car, but I did note it. And drives away while the church goes up in flames, presumably with Paul in it. As this is occurring, Jesse is looking for Badam and goes deep into the fucking woods to this really creepy metal shed again.
Man. You're looking for your kid. You just you walk into the woods and just go to a shed.
Yeah, I guess it isn't on their property because I feel like if it was, they would
it's definitely not. Yep.
Yeah, weird jurisdictional situation there. So she walks into the creepy shed looking for Badam, and Badam had earlier gotten into Jesse's locked photos of the original Adam. So shit's getting all wacky. Jesse walks through the shed and it's very creepy, quiet. tense, I'm using air quotes, scene looking for Badham. We see the axe being grabbed, but can't see who grabbed it. And then Badham tries to take a swing down onto Jesse, but Paul intervenes at the perfect time and grabs the axe handle and stops him from doing it.
Powerful stuff.
And yeah, so he intervenes.
His timing was really convenient.
It really was.
Like, it's very convenient that he like had to go all the way into the woods and like anything could have slowed him down or sped him up at any time. But he happened to arrive literally a tenth of a second before the axe blade was going to connect with his wife's skull.
Right, because he had to go from the church, and I assume he went home first before seeing that they weren't home, which would take some time, and then go into the woods to the only location there, which is that creepy-ass shed. Meanwhile, Jesse is like already in the shed where all of this shit's about to happen.
I don't think the timing like really matters. That could just be like the way you stagger stuff.
That's just
for
movie
dramatic
time.
effect.
Yeah.
But like, I just mean like, what are the chances that it's so Deus Ex Machina
Pretty
in like
low.
the sloppiest, stupidest way ever? It's like he would never arrive just in time. That's so dumb.
But it's okay because by intervening, he brings Badham back and he asks him, "Who are you?" And Badham says, "I'm your son," and then gives a really creepy ass smile. But it's fine. Like everything's okay.
Oh, can I just say I hate the way the kid looks, by the way. Like I think that he looks like the kind of kid that you would not want to interact with. And like it's so much worse with the short hair that he has later in the movie. I just feel like he's always making that like that weird shit-eating grin face that he makes after he says, "I'm your son."
That's what makes him so good in that role.
Like, yeah, I guess.
He has perfect creepy horror movie kid face.
Yeah.
Something about his eyes.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Sweet kid. Yeah.
I'm sure he's a nice guy. He's as
well, I guess he's
older.
Old
he's
now.
as old as us.
He's got to be our age, or maybe
a little older.
Younger.
Oh, younger?
No, he would have been 8 in 2002 or 2003 when they filmed this.
Oh, that's right. They filmed it earlier.
Like,
I wasn't thinking
even if
about
they
the
filmed
filming
it at the same
date.
time. Were you
what are you talking about? If he's 8 in 2004, if he's 8 in 2004, he would have been born in
1996. Okay. Oh my god,
guys! I'm listening and I'm learning. If you have any words of encouragement, send them at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. What are you looking for?
Adam Duncan, Cameron Bright. He is 32, so he played this role old. He was born in 1993, so he played it a little old. He's in 3 installments of the Twilight Saga.
Cool. Hey, I've been in 0, so good for him.
Yeah,
that's great.
He still doesn't have a face I like very much, honestly.
And we wish him the best. So we get our final time jump of the film. It's 6 months later. We see Richard Godsend at home looking at newspapers, and there are headlines about his alleged disappearance, or I guess his actual disappearance. So he seems to have vanished or whatever after the incident. And Paul and his family are moving into a new suburban home. This one isn't as nice as the lake house, but it's in the classic suburban neighborhood. Pretty big house, I'd say probably an easy $350K back then. Looks nice. A lot of space for a family of 3, but whatever, I guess you get what you can. They're moving into the house, moving trucks are coming in, and Badham is staring out of the window like a weirdo. There's this tense fake out to Badham. He opens his large wooden wardrobe and he looks in it and it's empty because they're just starting to move in. And then we get this weird cut where all of a sudden it's pitch black looking into it, and we see this burned arm of like the varsity jacket. It pulls him from the shadows. It pulls him in to the wardrobe, but it's a fake out because Paul comes in to the room and it's totally fine. He looks in the wardrobe and Badham surprises him from behind, and they talk about that, how they're in a place where they can start over, but there's an indication that it's actually Zachary at that point and not Adam in control of the body. And that's how it ends, on that lingering note of unease. And that was my a totally flawless recap of the film Godsend.
Yeah, that was maybe your best work yet.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me change things up here a little bit and let me ask, Mike, what did you think of Godsend?
Oh boy. So we're getting into our final ratings, huh? This is another toughie. It's another one of these, and there seem to be a lot of them films in De Niro's filmography that hover somewhere between a 2 or 2.5 out of 5 for me. I think I ultimately am going to have to go with a 2. I was kind of bought into it in the beginning. It is very tightly paced. It's a pretty breezy watch because it fails as a horror film because it's not scary, but it's tightly paced. It flies right by. I thought that Adam's death, it was so audacious and goofy and over the top that it kind of sucked me in. It made me feel on board with what I was watching for a while. And I think I gave it the benefit of the doubt, hoping that there would be more moments like that, but nothing really rose to that level. The scares completely fell flat for me. They have some arguments about the morality of that sort of situation. And I thought, especially in 2004, that is an interesting jumping off point, that sort of debate about fertility, cloning, these sorts of ethical issues, and integrating them into a horror film could potentially work. But to your point, this is elevated horror film material that is not given the level of consideration that it really needs to be interesting or have something interesting to say. And so it just kind of fell flat for me. But I liked the performances. De Niro was fun in it as the villain. I think that was nice. It was an easy watch. And if you're looking for that sort of easy early 2000s horror to throw on in the background or whatever, or during October, then sure, go for it. But it's not good, and it's not quite fun enough to be an entertaining bad film. What did you think? I'm curious to hear this. What did you think of Godsend?
It was fascinating. I'm really surprised by your rating and the way that you talked about it, honestly.
Really?
I'm gonna give it 1.5 stars.
Okay.
I think it was exceptionally bad. I think that, to your point, it's nice that it's short. Mm-hmm. It's nice that the pacing is really tight. The performances are quite nice. I like Greg Kinnear. I think he's great in the role. I think this is a great Robert De Niro performance, by the way. Like, he's given nothing to work with. Like, this is like the worst written character.
He really
in,
isn't
in
very
the history of fiction. But like, he nails it. It's really good. I think that honestly, part of what makes the character not work for me is that I think, like, I just find De Niro, when he looks and dresses like this, so relaxing. Like, he's just like, he's got an authoritative, like, kind of kindness to him, but like there's like some warmth there, and he's just like got the goatee, and he's like a late middle-aged man, and he's wearing like big pleated pants like he did at the time, and it's just like, I trust him. He seems
it is kind of comforting.
Right. Yep.
The way he speaks in that film, I would have trusted him too. Sure.
Easy. Like, the performances are good. But I think that it's got a really bad script, and I think the cinematography is quite bad, and I think the sound design is quite bad. And I think that, like, honestly, the thing that I found fascinating about your description of your thoughts on the film is the credit that you gave it for having an audacious idea for its time. Like, I don't know, man. There are lots of audacious ideas out there. It's like, if you have an audacious idea and then you totally fail to convey it in a way that is like legible and believable to viewers, and also fail to convey anything at all profound thematically or like psychologically or emotionally, it's like, I don't know, why would you get any credit for having that idea?
I'm just a softie, man. I'm a softie. I'm clearly
really
a softie. I'll for all of the accusations you and friend of the podcast, Caroline, have made about me being a snob,
so funny.
Here I am giving a higher rating to Godsend.
Wow.
Okay, I think that's great. Hey, at least it's fun when our reviews or our ratings differ or diverge. I think that's always fun.
And it's really fun when I'm lower than you too, because that's going to be like 1/5 of the time. So I'm
for
happy
sure
this happened.
Yeah. Well, then let me throw it back at you and ask, what would you recommend to our audience instead of Godsend?
Oh, my recommendation is easy. It's
really?
Ari Aster's Hereditary.
Oh, gee, I should have seen that coming.
I think that there is so much, I think, like, shared DNA between this and Hereditary. Like, they're both telling almost like parable-esque stories about like families and trauma and love and loss and the effect that has on people and like their like reactions to those things happening. And it also tells a story where a thing that at first seems like it has a a materialistic kind of physical explanation for why it's happening turns out to be spiritual and inexplicable in its dimensions. And I think that, Hereditary is an effective elevated horror film. It's like it does have some legitimately disturbing moments, and it is elevated. Like it succeeds at profundity in like every way that like this fails. And like you don't like it because you don't like that kind of thing, but like it's a good movie. Like it succeeds at achieving those goals.
Right.
And it's gonna be that one. I really like that movie.
What I will say about Hereditary is, I'm not a fan of elevated horror in general, but Hereditary is, in my opinion, the best elevated horror film that I've ever seen. I think it's good. I do think Hereditary is good. I have some issues with it, but I think that's just more for the genre in general. But I think that's a really good connection to this film and a really good recommendation. I would second that recommendation. Don't let me deter you. If you haven't seen Hereditary, I think it is absolutely worth a watch.
What do you got?
I'm gonna go in a much trashier direction.
He's going with Star Trek: Strange New Worlds.
That's right. Oh man, yeah. Why the hell not? Yeah, watch this slightly above average. No, I would never. I'm actually also going to keep it in the horror family, but I was coming at it from a different angle. I think you made thematic connections that I thought were really good, and certainly if you're interested in a film about those sorts of things, then Hereditary is definitely much more worth your time. But I'm picking a film that was successful in the way that I wanted Godsend to be. I think in my rating, I was kind of talking about how in the beginning I had this idea of what it was going to be tonally, and I thought it was going to be a little more outrageous, a little more fun, and it really ended up not being those things. I don't think you do know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to tell you, and then we'll see if you were right. I'm recommending the 2023 horror film, The Pope's Exorcist.
Oh, it's really not. I thought you were going to say The Exorcist.
Oh, no. Nope.
Because didn't you watch that last year for the first time and you really liked it?
In the last 2 years, I've watched The Exorcist and The Exorcist 3 for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was right. I knew you'd recently.
That was very close. Yeah. That was in the final running for what I was going to recommend. Not the first one, actually. The first one, very good. Understand why it's a classic. Understand why many. Have you seen it?
Nope, I never have.
I haven't seen The Exorcist. Oh no, it's a really good film. Definitely recommend it.
But I've never even heard of it.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you all about it. But I will just say about The Exorcist 3, don't sleep on it. It is a fantastic psychological horror film that feels very similar tonally to the film 7, and it's a tight 2 hours. Really good film. That's not what I'm recommending. I'm recommending The Pope's Exorcist. The Pope's Exorcist, it's a 2023 film starring Russell Crowe, doing a fantastic Italian accent. It is apparently inspired by true events, and basically the little description on Letterboxd is Father Gabriel Amorth, Russell Crowe, chief exorcist of the Vatican, investigates a young boy's terrifying possession and ends up uncovering a centuries-old conspiracy the Vatican has desperately tried to keep hidden. And it's an awesome film. It's not scary at all, but it is a ton of fun. Like, Russell Crowe is clearly having fun as the Pope's exorcist. The tone, it really hits that self-aware, a little silly, but not too, it's not like meta or anything, but it knows the film that it is. It embraces it in a way that I think you hit the nail on the head. Godsend wanted to be elevated horror, but wasn't, because the quality just wasn't there. The Pope's Exorcist knows it's fun trash, starring Russell Crowe doing an accent, and by God, it delivers. So I think, and listen, here's my watch list. Here's my appeal to our audience, small as it may be, but growing every day. De Niro Nation, we're out here making incredible recommendations to you every week, really, and I know you're not watching these films, and I just want to ask, why not? Every film we've recommended is definitely worth your time, and I'm making a list on my Letterboxd at Mike Back at You of all the recommendations. Peruse that list. Take a look. I bet you're going to find something that tickles your fancy. And if you ever do watch one of our recommendations, Write into our hero De Niro at
please, right.
gmail.com. Yeah. Tell us what you thought. Make it pithy. But please let us know how you feel about it. Because I was thinking about it after our second 0 Day episode. I recommended Black Cat. And Mike and I were so excited thinking about Black Cat that we both ended up watching the film separately, but watching the film later that night.
Yep.
Because Black Cat fucking rules. But yes, The Pope's Exorcist and Hereditary, I think, are both fantastic suggestions, which brings us to our little listener mail segment, which we'll do pretty quickly, actually. This is a little bit of an older letter. It's about the 15 Minutes episode, but it is from friend of the podcast, Philip. Philip writes, "Show is coming together nicely, fellas. I can tell it's good because you hold my interest despite the subject matter, some middling movie from 2001, being so uninteresting. And knowing what is still yet to come in our hero's body of work, keeping interest in the uninteresting is vital. I was all prepared to write about Mike the Fab making up a word, but then I Googled it. I was thinking the word dickering was an accidental portmanteau of bickering and dicking around, but nope, it means exactly what you wanted it to. So I've been educated." Philip, thank you for the pithy letter. I love it. He wrote it a while ago, so no points off for not following live show rules.
Hey,
but now it's out there.
Yep. I have something else from Philip that I'd like to read, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, shit.
Yeah, no, you're going to be excited about this. So I went to Letterboxd to search for The Pope's Exorcist, and I saw that Philip, friend of the pod, had rated and written a review for Robert De Niro and Netflix's 0 Day.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm reading a 1-star Letterboxd review of 0 Day by friend of the pod, Philip.
Okay.
And he writes, "In a roundabout way, I gave 3 hours of my life to this, so I deserve to rate it." And I don't know. Do you agree? You think listening to our hero De Niro gives you the right to rate a film? I don't. I mean, it made me laugh, maybe smile when I saw it, but I don't know. I don't think you didn't watch it, Philip.
I gotta say no, only because I like it as a bit. I think it's funny. I respect what you're doing, but it is stolen valor.
Well, it's not even stolen valor. It's just like
I think it's stolen valor.
Letterboxd rating is like it's got a 3.2. Like I think that's a little high, but I mean that's what the people think. You're gonna give it a fake 1 star? You got to at least watch it if you want to rate it.
So okay, Philip. You know what you have to do. You need to take 5.5 hours out of your day, and you need to watch Netflix's 0 Day so that rating will be able to stand. Yes, incredible. Poor Philip didn't realize that he was going to have action items from today's episode.
Yep,
that's what you get for being a loyal subscriber. Okay, I think it's time for us to bring it to our final segment here, the roll. It is Mike's turn to roll. And I'm excited for this. I'm excited but nervous as always. How are you feeling about this?
I'm excited.
What are you hoping for, if anything?
I don't know. I mean, we still haven't seen anything really good. So at this point, I think we're what, like 11 episodes in or whatever. Like
this is our 10th episode.
I think I'd like a good movie. Like, can we get like Goodfellas or something? Like, we don't need like Heat, but like a good movie. Like,
I don't want Heat until the very end. I want it to be our last episode. That would be my dream. If I could go out on Heat, I'd be a happy guy.
Do you know what the chances of that happening are?
I'd say pretty low.
Yeah, I think it's like a millionth of a percent. I'm trying to think about like the number of zeros. Like it's like so infinitesimally unlikely that that'll happen. We have to get to the end without rolling it. It's the last time.
Listen, anything's possible.
I know what the chances are. I think it's 1 in 104 factorial. Or maybe 103 and 103 factorial or whatever, but it's a very small number in any case.
I think we can make it happen.
Let's fucking bet on this. Let's bet on this shit.
Yep. All right. So yeah, I'm hoping for Goodfellas. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I rolled 75. It's not going to be Goodfellas.
Oh my God. You want to say it? You can say it. It was your roll. You can say it.
Oh, I'm pretty happy, honestly. It's like the second best kind of thing it could possibly have been. We rolled Little Fockers.
We sure did.
Loyal listeners of the pod will remember that we established a rule in the first episode that if we roll a sequel in a series, we will default to the original movie. So it sounds like we are watching number 56, 2000's Meet the Parents, which is honestly a great movie. So,
holy crap. When's the last time you watched it?
I like late high school, early college at the most recent, but I know it's good.
You're saying that, and like I'm not so confident. I haven't seen it.
I believe that Meet the Parents is good.
I probably haven't seen it since high school, so this will technically be a rewatch, but it's gonna feel very fresh. Yeah. I'm excited. This came out in 2000, so I like that we're having a little bit of time in this era. I think that's nice. Freaking credible. Good role, man.
On Metacritic. This is 100% going to be a good movie. Like for like a dumb comedy, that's the highest score it could possibly have.
I'm hoping it is. I'm hoping it's good. I'm just saying you are more confident in this memory of a film that you saw 15 years ago than I am. Hey, De Niro Nation. It's Mike coming at you from the Edit Bay with a quick update. We forgot when we were recording this episode that there's actually a new Robert De Niro film coming out in theaters very soon. It's called The Alto Nights, and it stars Robert De Niro in dual roles as 1950s mob bosses Vito Genovese and Frank Costello. So we're going to break the sequence to record an episode about that film and put it out as soon as possible. So you'll be hearing an episode about The Alto Nights next week, and then we will resume the sequence for Meet the Parents. All right, back to your regularly scheduled episode.
I'm really excited that this happened.
This is so great.
Yeah.
There you go.
This is exciting. Yep. Okay.
Holy
happy ending
crap.
for the episode.
Yeah, we don't even need to explain like that. Everyone knows Meet the Parents. This is going to be one of our recognizable titles.
Legendary Robert De Niro performance. Like, I'm so excited.
Oh, incredible. On that note, we're going to wrap it up. Be sure to follow us on Letterboxd. I'm Mike back at you, and he's Mike the Fab. Do email us at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. We look forward to receiving your mail, and we just hope it's pithy and follows live show rules, that you give us something to respond to. Rate us in Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you haven't, because I think that matters. I've been told it does. And we want to thank Caroline for the podcast artwork.
I agree. Thank you, Caroline. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you next week with Meet the Parents. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.